most of you have are probably aware, all of you may not be, but this terrible fire that has been in Smithville here this afternoon. I actually was given a call from Oak Hospital to come by there and try to see if we'd be able to link the family that was involved in that. Just a real tragedy. There was a 4-year-old that died in the fire. 2 adults have died at this time. And then also the mother has been emergency transported over to Nashville via ambulance. I guess they couldn't get the helicopters in there because of the weather. But the last word I heard, they were rushing her over there. They actually took her out while I was there and rushed her off to Nashville. So please keep that family. Their name, his name is Chad Johnson, and her name is Heather. The mother is the one that's infected. There's also a 2-year-old that is still being infected. And we don't know what the outcome will be there, but at least 2 people, 2 adults dead, and a 4-year-old is dead. So please keep the Chad and Heather Johnson family in your prayers. Heather is the one that the mother is in Nashville at this time. So I thought tonight, with all the tragedies that have been happening over East Tennessee, with the fires that have been there, I know that's been brought into our living rooms via 24/7 news coverage practically, and then there's been so much sickness and different things that have affected our congregation in so many ways over these last numbers of months, that tonight we pull over and just talk about hope a little bit. I'm going to talk about hope to you tonight, and I hope you're opening up over there to Romans chapter 8. We'll just read a verse or two, and I'll put something about hope set up to you. Something that I think you'll find interesting. We'll spring off of that to have a discussion about a couple of these scriptures here. In Romans chapter 8, Paul is discussing a number of different things. He starts off in verse 1 about being no condemnation if we're in Christ, and he ends up, by the time he gets to the end of the chapter, about the love of God and how nothing can separate us from it, especially things like the stress and tribulation and things down in verse 35. But before you get to verse 35, there's some other very meaningful things throughout this chapter. And down in verse 20, he starts talking about how this creation was subjected to futility. Not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope. So God has subjected this creation because of the fall of man and the sin that came into the world. It's become kind of a futile place if you look at it from the sight-only perspective. Tragedies and pain and suffering that goes on and on and on, and death and corruption he talks about. So you keep reading in verse 21, and he says, because the creation itself will be delivered, it will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. So a day is coming, Paul said, when there's going to be freedom and liberty from all this. We'll be liberated from this place of futility that he mentioned in verse 20. Verse 22, for we know that the whole creation groans. Strong word here, both in the English and the Greek. There's groaning going on. And labor, he says. The creation itself, he personifies the very creation. There's so much suffering. There's so much futility. There's so much pain. There's so much tragedy. And there's so much effects of sin in the world that he characterizes it that the whole creation is groaning and laboring, as even like it's in birth pains. Even to this time, he says, until now. Well, not only they, that is those in the world, but we also, who have the first fruits of the Spirit. As children of God, those that repented and been baptized into Christ and following Christ. And have been given the Holy Spirit, as we studied this morning, Ephesians 1 verse 14, as a seal. Even we, he says, being a child of God does not protect you from futility and from the pain that this world can bring into your life. And so he says, even we ourselves groan within ourselves. But we don't groan like the world does. Because the last part of verse 23 says, we are eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. So we have hope, he says. Look at it, verse 24 now. We'll read this verse and the next one and then spring off of this. We were saved in this hope. What hope? The hope of that redemption in verse 23. We were saved in this hope. But hope that is seen is not hope. For if we see it, he says, why does one still hope for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, then we eagerly wait for it with perseverance. We're not going to quit, Paul says, because of all this tragedy and pain. We're not going to give up what Christianity contributes to the world. A little four-letter word, hope. Christians have something tonight that people without Christ don't have. I know people without Christ sometimes claim that they die without fear. But they don't just die without fear, they die without hope. We have a hope tonight, a Christian hope. It is a hope that is based on an empty tomb. For 2,000 years, in the face of tragedy, Christianity has said that on Friday afternoon they killed God's Son. They put him in a borrowed tomb and they sealed it with a huge stone and they put a Roman guard there, and in the words of Scripture they made it as secure as they knew how. And Christianity says that sometime between Friday evening, when it looked so dark and so hopeless, it looked like the personification, hope in the flesh, Jesus Christ. It looked like he was dead and gone. Christianity says, come Sunday morning when some women came down to that tomb, they came down there with spices to anoint his body. They came down there to go do the burial rituals that they had not been able to do on that holy day on Saturday the Sabbath. They came down there to pay the respects to the dead. They debated among themselves and said, who will roll a stone away for us? They knew it was huge. They got down there and the stone was gone. And I like it what the different preachers have said over the years. That stone wasn't rolled away to let Jesus out. That stone was rolled away to let Peter and John in. See that tomb was empty. That's the hope we have tonight. Boy, what a hope it is. I don't know about you, when tragedy strikes, when it has hit our family, we grieve just like other people do. Preachers grieve, elders in the church grieve. We're not any different than you are. When tragedy hits your family, especially if it's long-standing tragedy, you're going to grieve, and you're going to cry, and you're going to weep, and you're going to moan. And if it's an intense enough suffering, like I saw that about a 40-year-old man this afternoon, you're going to be bawling and wailing, people standing around him and trying to comfort him, and told him all get away from him. And his mother was standing over there. 40-year-old man, his mother standing over there. He said, I don't want anybody here but Mom. He was weeping under trouble. He didn't want to talk to a preacher. He didn't want to pray. He was in shock. A tidal wave of grief had rolled in over him this afternoon. And I don't know where he's at with his faith. I don't know if he has faith or not. I don't know if he has hope or not. But I know that if that were a Christian man, and maybe he is, maybe he's a Christian believer, I don't know. But I know we have something that the world doesn't have. When tragedy rolls in, we have hope. We can't give that up. I'm not going to give it up to some atheist that tells me there's no God and no hope. I'm not going to trade it in that easily, even when tragedy rolls in. Because it was at a graveside that God did his greatest work, wasn't it? At a graveside, raised his son from the dead. That's what Christianity has said for 2,000 years. And what Bob Hope said? I love old Bob Hope. We can get this thing come up. He said, my ankles creak. He said that when he got older, my ankles creak, my knees crack, my ears ring, and my stomach growls. I'm not getting older, I'm getting louder. Yeah. Simple truth of the matter is he was getting both, wasn't he? He was getting loud and old. You young folks, you don't know about this yet, but your body starts making noise and sometimes it gets uncontrollable. Some of you know what I'm talking about and some of you don't. Just wonder about that a while, okay? But he told a pretty good description right there. I want to talk about hope for just a few minutes here. H. Jackson Brown Jr. said this. He was a writer. He said this. He said, never deprive someone of hope that may be all they have. It may be all they have. Paul talks about creation groaning and hurting, and futility, and tragedy, and pain and suffering. Look at verse 18 in this text, Romans 8. I reckon that the sufferings, that's a Bible word, sufferings is. It occurs in the context, in this chapter, of glory. And on both sides of it, there's hope. But in verse 18, he starts off, I reckon that the sufferings. Paul was a realist. He had seen suffering up close and uncomfortable. He knew all about suffering in his own life. And he says, I reckon that the sufferings of this present time, pain in this time, but the Christian message says they're not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. There's a here and now, and it's characterized by suffering. But there's also a hereafter. And as surely as the here and now is characterized by suffering, the hereafter will be characterized by glory. By glory that he says it's not even worthy to be compared. The glory isn't with what the suffering is now. And if that's true, if the suffering, if the glory that we're going to achieve as Christians is so much greater than the suffering we see that it's not even worthy to be compared. I mean, look around at the suffering we see. The abundance of it, the quantity of it, and sometimes the very depth and intensity of it. If glory that we are to achieve is so far beyond that Paul says by the Spirit, that's not even worth comparing. What must heaven really going to be like? I don't know, but I want to find out, don't you? I want to live in a place where God wipes away every tear. I want to live in a place where that tender, nail-scarred hand that died for my sins can reach over if there is a tear. And the Bible will teach us basically there won't be any. But the metaphor in Revelation 21 is God will wipe away every tear from our eyes. There'll be no more death, won't be any sorrow or sickness or suffering, won't be funeral homes and graveyards, not going to be jails and prisons, not going to be emergency rooms, not going to be fire and EMT people going to be thank God for it as they go rushing into a danger that most of us run from. But there won't be any of that in heaven. Not going to be terrorist bombings, not going to be news headlines about what's going on in the Middle East when some kids got blown up in the hospital by some hate-filled ISIS guy. That's not going to be in heaven. Not going to be like it is here in the news this past week where a man beat a 23-month-old baby to death right here in Camp County. Beat it to death. Suffering, oh yes. Futility, yes. We want to pull our hair out and scream as Christians sometimes, God, where are you in all this? And Paul says, I'm here to tell you. I'm here to tell you that he's right there with you. He knows all about suffering. His son suffered. Oh, hope? Yeah, don't deprive me of my hope. There are times in my life when that's all I have. So Paul would teach us in this text. And so I've been preaching more than 40 years, and I've seen people in some occasions go through Christians with immense suffering and pain, and some of them that are listening to me tonight. Things that we would hope Christians would never have to go through. Some of them were people of Christian faith and hope, and some of them I've seen suffer without Christian faith and hope. What I can tell you with certainty is not that faith and hope make the suffering any easier or automatically make the pain go away. That's not what Christian faith does. I can't tell you that with certainty tonight. But I can tell you with certainty that faith and hope make a difference in people's lives. It makes a difference. I've seen people die without hope. I've been called to the bedside of a man in Missouri who lived without faith, who lived without hope. And when he got ready to die, he called for a preacher. He wasn't ready to die. He didn't want to die. He was unprepared to die. But he called for somebody that could traffic a little bit at the end of his life in hope. So Paul is teaching in this text the same thing that's on that screen. Never deprive someone of hope. It may be all they have. And we're going to turn to 2 Corinthians 4, if you will, and we'll just spend a few minutes here, and the lesson will be yours tonight. We'll go home and do our families and get ready for the work week. And so, this is an anonymous saying. The clearest, let me back up. Did I have this on here? Maybe I've got it here. I hope I do. I might not have it on here too. No, I don't. Let me back up. Get back up there. Come on. There you go. Somebody said the clearest view of everything that happens comes from heaven. Did you catch that? The clearest view of everything that happens comes from heaven. Well, wait a minute, Dan. What are you talking about? How have we heard from heaven? Well, we heard from it right here in this text we studied, right here in Romans 8. Heaven is speaking to us. The hope we have can't be seen. It's out there in the hereafter. We got to get to it before we see it. Heaven is speaking to us tonight, and it gives us a clear view right in the middle of all this fog down here. And so now in 2 Corinthians 4, verse 16 to 18, let's see how this view from heaven, this clear view that God gave him, let's see how that helped him here. Verse 16, 2 Corinthians 4, therefore we do not lose heart. Even though our outward man is perishing, there's that creaking and cracking and what Bob Hope was talking about. Even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. So you've got an outer man and you've got an inner man. If you're a woman, you can call it an outward woman and an inward woman. But you've got an outward and an inward being, the soul. That's being renewed day by day by God's Spirit through His Word. And so verse 17, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, well, it's working for us, Paul says. That's actually working for us. This light affliction we're having here, he says, it's not something that's passive in our lives. Suffering for Christians, it's not a question of why is it happening. It's a question of what is God doing with it. What is God doing in suffering? The Christian religion says that it was at a cross where the worst kind of suffering that ever happened took place. It was there that God Almighty did something that was so powerful in its nature. It was so redemptive that it enabled anyone who would come and believe that they could be saved from their sins. And it was through that suffering God accomplished it. So Paul says our light affliction, which is but for a moment, suffering here is momentary compared to eternity. And I know it doesn't seem that way sometimes, but eternity is beyond our imagination. Our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. He goes on and says in verse 18, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary. And it says that in the context of suffering and affliction. It's temporary. But the things which are not seen are eternal. But what is it that Paul said in Romans 8 that we can't see? Hope. Our hope. In Colossians 1 verse 5 and Colossians 1 verse 23, and so many of the scriptures teach us our hope is in heaven. We can't see it tonight. We see it afar by the eye of faith. It can't be seen. But Paul says if it can't be seen, what nature is it? It's eternal. If it can be seen, it's temporary. I'll go ahead and say if it can be felt, it's temporary. Get a headache, what do you reach for? Some of us reach for Tylenol, some of us for Bayer, some of us for other things. But to get a headache, reach for something to make it go away, don't you? Why? Because we want it to be temporary. And I tell you, I think about our congregation and the way that we've just been hammered on the last 18 months. And people dying, and people getting diseases, and accidents. And our community has reeled a number of times under suffering, and young people being snatched away. Now think about all that. And the one thing that keeps us empowered in all that, that four-letter word hope, gives you a clear vision when the fog sets in life. You remember Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6, don't you? If you know it with me, say it in your heart. If you want to say it out loud, say it out loud. But it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you literally couldn't see 2 feet in front of you? I've been in fogs out here at this lake trying to get the fish. Risking my life, I guess, to go fishing. If you ever go out the ridge out here at 56 on Joe Fortner's done it, Caleb Gulley's done it, all of you have done it that have had to go to Cookville this fall and the winter of the year. You've gone out that ridge, we call that 56 North, that's a ridge out there, that's all that is. And the fog comes up off that beautiful Tennessee lake out there, and it gets so thick sometimes you can't see the end of your hood on it. You got to inch your way along and hope that I'll use a kind word, some crazy person behind you doesn't come flying up at 60 and run over you. Because you can't see very far. So you inch your way along. And it's almost like feeling your way along, isn't it? I remember being in an airplane in South America in the middle of a thunderstorm, way up in the sky. That's nervous enough for me to be up there. in a tiny little airplane. It was a jet prop, single engine, hold about 10, 12 people. John Green was right over here, and I think Jerry Nash was behind him, and the pilot was right up here, and a thunderstorm set in, and he's flying right into it. It got where you couldn't see the wing. You couldn't see anything outside that window. It was as white outside that window as he walked back there. You couldn't see anything right there. It was in on us. And I'm just going into a tizzy. I'm looking over at John, and my feet are gripping, my toes is gripping the floor. And my knuckles are white, and I'm praying like I've never prayed before. I looked over at John, and he comes in and rolled his eyes at me. And you know what gave me hope? I looked up there at the pilot. And you know what he did? He didn't even have his hands on the controls. He had it on autopilot. And he's up there looking at some manual and trying to get his bearings on something. And he just was calm and snug with the lug under the rug, and I wanted to hit the guy. Scream at him. Tell him, you crazy guy, look outside the window. You couldn't see anything. But he had trust. He had trust in some instruments that were telling him exactly where he was at, what his position was. He had something that I couldn't understand that he was trusting in to keep him oriented in that fog. And I think about all this tragedy we face from time to time. It's here for you sooner or later. Suffering at this present time, and not going away. Now think about when it rolls in. And your emotions they get overwhelmed like that storm, and you're in a fog, and you're trying to feel your way along. How in the world can you make it? And you've got to have an instrument that you trust in. You've got to have you've got to have something that you put your faith and your hope in, that you can let your weight down on in that time when it's foggy, when your tragedy is overwhelming you. And you've got to trust that the same God who tells you to trust and hope, you've got to trust that the same God who tells you to persevere through suffering, you've got to trust that the same God who tells you that suffering is something you can't escape, you've got to know that the gospel tells you He came right down here in the middle of it, and He took suffering on in a personal way. He came down here in the body, in the flesh, precisely so He could suffer. He faced every temptation we do, yes we do. Yet be without sin and be perfected as a Savior. And Hebrews 5:8-9 says to go to the cross and suffer some more. Unjustly. The only true case of injustice, as far as unjust suffering, the only true case of unjust suffering for sin that the universe has ever seen. And God came down here and took it on personally. So, in your fog, and in your feeling along, and as you struggle to find your way, try to wedge yourself to this belief. Try to wedge yourself to this, try to nail yourself to this hope. The God who asks you to not give up faith and hope in your suffering is a God who knows all about suffering. He came down here and suffered for you. So that one day, Paul says, this is all going to seem like elementary, lightweight stuff compared to the quantity and the quality of the glory that shall be seen in us. I can't imagine. I've heard songs about it. But I can't imagine what it's going to be like to see Jesus. There's a group called Mercy Me that asks, will I sing for you, Jesus? Will I fall on my face? I can only imagine. I can't imagine, can you? And I try to imagine sometimes. I sat there during the Lord's Supper this morning. I had the thought in my head, what kind of man was Jesus? That his sacrifice was so complete and so selfless that it affects every person who has ever lived. And that He loved me. Me! The great, awesome me that some people just can't see how great and awesome I am, and they don't love me, but He loved me. I said that with tongue into both cheeks, okay? What's it going to be like to be with all the redeemed gifts? To be with the saints who've gone on before us? I can't imagine. But I know one thing. God will give me the grace. God will give me the hope. I don't know what the future holds for any of us. I don't know what it holds for our congregation at home. I know the devil, it seems, is hammering on us and hammering on us. But right in front of us, some of these people have shown us what trust and faith and hope are all about, even as the fog just settles in and won't go away. God speak to you tonight. God bless you. I hope that faith and hope can give you a clearer view as you struggle through your pain and your suffering here and now. Don't lose hope and don't lose focus on the hereafter. I'm going to stop because that's all we really need to say about that tonight. Pray for the folks in East Tennessee. There's some sad, sad stories coming out there. Pray for this Johnson family here in DeKalb County and some other recent deaths. Pray for our members who are battling cancer and other diseases. May God help us all to keep that clear view that faith brings to life, even when the ball comes in. Tonight, if you need to respond to Jesus in any way